Hello and welcome to the continuation of the story I'm telling about discovery and the colonial immigration in South America. I'm shrinking the story and I'm picking up from the 18th century where I left in the last chapter. And I'm, as usual, using my trophies and my memories, my physical gadgets and trophies to tell the story. I hope you enjoy, and don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel. This is my grown-up toy. I mentioned in the previous videos that I have many gadgets, many souvenirs, many trophies. I would be telling stories of them. You see here the trophies that I used to tell the story till now. But it's not only that type physically. I have books, not to mention my collection of baseball caps. But I have the books, and the books mean something. And I'll tell the story about start the story with a special one, which is regarding Porto Alegre, the place where I was born. In the previous video I mentioned that the Portuguese were not settlers. That was in the 16th century. And that all changed with the Iberic Union and the arrival and the tentative settlement by the French and the Dutch in the center and northeast Brazil. The south was the land of the Charruas, the Indians, Charruas, indigenous people, and they were a scarce population in the vast plains of the Pampa. With the rise of the cattle ranching and the difficulties to subdue the indigenous population, the Portuguese changed tactics and started incentivating immigration from Portugal and other European nations. The first settlers to arrive in the south were the Açorians that gave birth to Porto Alegre, Florianópolis in Santa Catarina state. To Porto Alegre were assigned 60 couples that came to settle at the banks of the Guaíba River, a natural port in the lagoon that was linked to the sea in the south. Flying or navigating, you'll be crossing the Atlantic. From Americas, you'll fly over the Azores Islands, either Santa Maria or Lages. The books you see here were a birthday gift from my parents. One is an environmental presentation of the whole region of the city and Porto Alegre and surroundings, and is very well prepared and easy to understand for anybody. The other one is a photographic essay, also a birthday gift, was later on given to me. The first one was in 1999. And the other one later on. The architecture of Porto Alegre reflects mostly the colonial style, late colonial style from Portuguese, and the Açorian Bridge that I show here is the oldest Açorian monument still standing in Porto Alegre. Porto Alegre was once a busy port, and not today, but the rivers that flow into the Porto Alegre, into the Guaíba River, are still in use for lots of goods that travel on the rivers from inside the state. Porto Alegre is the southernmost state capital of Brazil, the state of Rio Grande do Sul, that borders with Uruguay and Argentina. The metropolitan area of Porto Alegre has around 3.5 million inhabitants today, estimated. The big cattle raising farms were manned by the gauchos, or gauchos, the South American cowboys, and was generally the gaucho is a typical descendant of Europeans mixed with the local indigenous population. And the headband you see in the head of the statue represents that cultural influence. The mixing was common because in the beginning only men immigrated from Portugal or wherever to the new found territories and mixed with the local population. There were hardly black slaves in these farms. This trade grew up as the agricultural sector developed, but was always in far smaller scale than in the southeast and northeast Brazil, where sugarcane, cotton, and especially mining developed. Events in Europe, like the French Revolution and the raise to power by Napoleon, brought the Portuguese crown to Brazil, and the actual capital of the Portuguese reign became Rio at one point, because the Portuguese crown took refuge in that city, escaping from the invasion of Portugal and the Napoleonic Wars. This period saw great development of immigration from other European countries, notably Portuguese, Italians, Spanish, and Germans. But the first known Italian immigrant was Filippo Cavalcanti. He married Catarina de Albuquerque, the daughter of a Portuguese nobleman, and with a local Indian woman called Tabira. That was in mid-16th century. With the European immigration developing at this point in history, the Portuguese were concentrated in the center and northeast North Brazil, while the other European countries, other countries were concentrated in the south. Narrowing down my area of observation and study here, what I'm talking about, with the independence from Portugal and the centralizing economic and political power in the southeast and the capital, Rio, in Brazil, the South declared independence. The state of Rio Grande do Sul became called República Piratini. They proclaimed a republic, and a 10-year war ensued. One very known character that had immigrated to Brazil for political reasons, he had to leave his country and end up living there for 10 years, fighting this war. And he met his wife, married there, and then after the war he went back to his land and was basically responsible for the unification of that country. That country is Italy, and he was Giuseppe Garibaldi. But let's consider this transversal story here, which I will not develop. You can read a book. I suggest this book. Is written by Alexander Dumas, and he was his friend and was personally dictated by Garibaldi to him. During that revolutionary period, slavery was abolished in the South. And the slaves, actually, they fought for their freedom, not for money or anything else. But at the end, with the defeat, they were betrayed and being massacred and sent back to slavery. They were the Black Lancers. After defeat, the drama returned to the status quo of slavery. While Brazil started to develop as a regional economic and military power, the country was involved in a big hegemonic war allied with Argentina and Uruguay against military aspirations and territorial aspirations of Paraguay. This war was a bloodbath, basically eliminating the male population of Paraguay. At the same time, the European immigration was gaining pace, and Brazilian wealthy intellectuals went to study in Europe, and the conscience in Europe was that slavery has to be abolished, alongside with the British that wanted consumers for the Industrial Revolution and for their goods they were producing. And so the population, the general population, politicians, they started claim the end of slavery. Castro Alves, seen here, is an important figure in this movement. His poem, O Navio Negreiro, is one of the greatest classics in the Brazilian literature. And the banning of slave trafficking was the first measure taken by the government towards the end of slavery. The movement gained strength towards the end of the century, though slow. During a period of 40 years, Brazil saw the slavery dwindle down, and at the end, in 1888, signed the final law abolishing for good the slavery in Brazil. At this point, another chapter started with a massive immigration to work on the land, and especially in the small existing industrial park, and thus incrementing the economical activities that new entrepreneurs started. Next, I'll tell what happened with the freed population from slavery, and where we're standing with the descendants, and I will narrow down on our family, as our grandparents and parents lived the history in a very dramatic amidst the historical events of the last century. The early 20th century saw a very big, a massive immigration towards America from everywhere. Brazil was no different. And that was interesting, as the population didn't form specific ghettos of nationalities. They lived basically together in Brazil, but that was for everybody else, but not the free slaves. Next, I'll tell what happened to them. As we arrived at the end of this journey today, I hope you have enjoyed. Follow the next chapter. I'll talk about what happened with the freed slaves and with the massive immigration that arrived in Brazil. Don't forget to subscribe and press the like button. Thank you very much, and bye-bye.